You know the movie Lean on Me is that's one of my favorite movies of all time. Morgan Freeman at the time he had just really hit the Hollywood movie scene when he took the role as Principal Joe Clark. It was actually his third movie he did, but he should have won an Oscar for his portrayal of Joe Clark. He embodied that character because the real Joe Clark was no joke, especially when it came to education. You know, school is supposed to be a safe place for kids, and there are principals and staff members from schools that do really care about kids. Joe Clark was one of them. He was a well-spoken, very smart, educated, and a brave man. His vocabulary, his words he used to say was insane. Expeditiously. That was his word right there. Remember in Lean on Me, when Morgan Freeman told Sam, you smoke crack, jump. You smoke crack, don't you jump. Expeditiously. Wow. Y'all thought rapper T.I. was the first to use that word all the time. Nah. Joe Clark. The real Joe Clark, every morning he used to teach the kids a new big vocabulary word over the loudspeaker and use it in a sentence for them to understand and take it with them for the rest of their life. He had a tough job protecting those kids at the school to the point that Joe Clark said he would come home so tired, man, he would go straight to sleep from all the stuff he had to deal with. That's how tired he was from dealing with the things he had to do to make Eastside High a great school again. He was like a father to a lot of those students who didn't have one in their household. A lot of people loved him and a lot of people hated him, but his heart was in the right place and he knew he had to be tough. He had to be tough to make his agenda work because he knew that young people needed direction to succeed in life. To be honest, a lot of the people that were in power in his city, New Jersey, were really jealous of him because he had a lot of power. He had the people behind him, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind either. He was getting death threats almost every day dealing with that East Side High, man. Let's get into the story, man. Principal Joe Clark, right? Now, Joe Lewis Clark was born May 8th, 1938 in Rochelle, Georgia. He was actually named after the boxing legend Joe Louis. Now, by the age of 6 years old, his family ended up moving from Georgia to Newark, New Jersey. And, you know, growing up in Jersey at that time, it was rough. As him and his family, they struggled to survive in the ghetto. He from the poverty-stricken area too, so he know all about that stuff. But, you know, Joe Clark growing up, he said it was so bad, in order to stay warm in the winter and cool in the summer, he would just go to the library and read. He just started educating himself. He always had a job while working in high school. He had to support his mother, brother, and sisters at the time. Now, after graduating high school, he went to William Patterson College and got his bachelor's degree. And then he went to Seton Hall University and got his master's degree and an honorary doctorate from the U.S. Sports Academy. Now, after that, he joined the military. He went to the military, became a drill sergeant. Now, after his time in the military, he became a teacher at Patterson Elementary School and served as the director of camps and playgrounds in Essex County, which led to him getting a job as a principal at the PS6 Elementary School, in which he ended up turning that school around. He was praised and called a hero for turning that elementary school around, which was in one of Patterson's, New Jersey's worst neighborhoods at the time. But he turned that school around because before he got to that school and changed things, that school was mainly all black and Spanish poor kids who can barely read. And he got them up to par, and he was recognized and praised by the city for helping those students. So once he done that, he became popular, and the school board loved what he was doing. And that's when he got that call from the school superintendent named Frank Napier about becoming a principal at Eastside High School, which was also located in Paterson, New Jersey. The school board had just gotten rid of the recent principal at Eastside High, and he couldn't control what was going on there. Eastside High was just out of control at the time. Now, they had offered Joe Clark the job, right? Now, at first, he really didn't want to take the job because he wanted to be more active in his own kid's life, because he knew about all the troubles that Eastside High possessed. But see, the thing about Joe Clark is he loved a challenge. He always loved a challenge. He was a drill sergeant. He liked to perform miracles, and he knew what it took to straighten up a young person. So at first, when he asked him about taking the job, he turned down the offer at first. But then he thought about it and agreed to take the job as principal. Plus, he knew his kids was kind of older. They was getting out of high school soon. So he was up for the challenge. He was ready for the task. And another reason they gave him the principal job at Eastside High was nobody else wanted the position. Because see, at that time, Eastside High was off the chain. How bad was it? Well, put it like this: the teachers were afraid to walk the halls. A lot of the students came to school armed with weapons. Drug dealers were hustling all through the school and everything. See, students was having sex in there. There were a lot of sexual assaults. You had students that were like 20 years old in there, still in there. Security guards were getting stabbed up for breaking up fights, and some of the security guards were even selling drugs in there. And at the time, Eastside had over 2,000 black kids, over 1,000 Latino kids, and only 15 white kids at that school. Wow. They didn't have many white students at that school. So, Joe Clark took the job, started planning out how to get the school back from the drug dealers and the thugs. That was the first thing. How can he get the school back? Because it was being taken over by the drug dealers and the thugs. But before he started, he went to visit Eastside High just to see what was going on there and talk to staff members to see just what kind of challenges he would be facing, right? Started writing out all his plans, writing out his goals, his rules to make the school better. He started looking at everything that was wrong with the school from inside to the outside. Like, first thing, he had to get all the graffiti removed off there from the inside and outside through the halls. He had to fix all the bathrooms, fix all the broken windows, all the doors, put new locks on there, new cafeteria tables, desk chairs, etc. He started firing some of the administrative staff, and he replaced them with some of the staff he had brought from his school. He was dealing with the elementary school. He had brought them over there, some of his friends. He got new security guards. He got a new ID card system. He got that going, and that was for all the students to wear every day. So that way, he would know if they were a student or somebody who didn't belong in the school. And look, while putting all that in place, right, he was already getting death threats from the drug dealers who make their money at that school. Wow. The school they haven't even started yet, but he had already come face to face with some of the dope dealers and the thugs who saw what he was doing to the school, trying to make it better. And look, right, he said he was scared. He had to be scared. He was actually risking his life to save that school. But he knew he couldn't show weakness to the thugs, and he stood up for what he believed in. So by the first week of school, a lot of the parents of the kids were impressed by Joe Clark. And as weeks and months go by, he had to get rid of a few teachers, though, who didn't know what they was doing as far as teaching and didn't want to follow his rules. A couple teachers tested him. They're going to test you now. And they didn't like his dress codes, stuff like that. Because, see, the teachers, they were tenured. They were tenured in and couldn't be fired. And they knew that he couldn't fire them, so they were rubbing in Mr. Clark's face. But you know, Joe Clark, he knew how to get rid of them though. He knew how to get on their nerves to make them want to quit. He knew how to get in their heads and be all over them. He would check their lesson plans and everything until they ended up wanting to be transferred. But he had to do that because some of the teachers that was there they were just there for a paycheck. And they would just pass students to the next grade uneducated and everything. When he arrived at that school, a total of 7 teachers retired or transferred, and 4 vice principals did the same thing. They also said that he fired a basketball coach for talking during the singing of the school song. Wow. Mr. Clark was wild, man. Joe Clark would fail you if you don't get it right. He'll fail you until you get it right. He didn't want no dumb kids on his watch, he said. He'll hold you back a grade until you get it right. But he had everything under control though, man. That first week, the first months when he first took control, walking through the halls with the bullhorn in his hand, he had restored order at Eastside High. He kept that Willie Mays baseball bat too, but that was just for the thugs though, who hung around outside trying to get into the school every second. The crazy part is, principals at other schools started seeing what he was doing, and he started using his methods and his style to run their schools. Other principals saw the way he was working and couldn't believe he got Eastside High to calm down. But you know, Joe Clark didn't play. In his book, right? His book titled Laying Down the Law, he said one time he had got word that a bunch of students were playing hooky at a house, and he showed up there with the bullhorn and everything, calling them out. Wow. You know, he really cared about his students. He really cared about their education. He wanted the parents to be more involved and get serious too about their kids' education. He created a lot of programs and after-school activities and clubs for the students too. You know, Joe Clark, man, he didn't play, man. He got rid of 300 students, they say now, his first week, all at once. Wow. What was that big word he used in the movie? You are all expurgated. But he kicked out 300 junior and senior students all in 1 year. And years later down the line, he kicked out about 60 more students. But most of the students, though, he kicked out grown men, grown women over the age of 18 years old. Some of them was like 20 years old still in the school. And they still was causing havoc in the school. So he kicked them out. And to be fair, a lot of the students he kicked out, he told them, when you're ready to learn, come back and see him. He said, come back and see him. He had to get rid of them because he had 3,000 other students to protect and teach. Now, according to Joe Clark, like I said earlier, before school had started, he had studied all the kids' records who attended the school. And he knew all the students. He knew if you were a good student or a troublemaker. He made it his duty to know everybody's name in that school. And he remembered their faces too. But you know, Eastside High was now his school. It was either his way or the highway. And when it came to his after school meetings with the parents, he would bring, man, 500 people would be in there, man. He had to move those meetings from the school to the city hall because it used to be so packed in there. The parents loved Mr. Clark, man, what he had done for the school. And a lot of them didn't like him though. They didn't like what he was doing, and they would call him a bully. A lot of them were upset, probably because he kicked their kids out of school. They probably was one of those out of the 300 kids that got kicked out. And there was a woman who really was trying to get him fired, like in the movie. She was trying to get him fired, but you know, everybody else was on his side, from white, black, Latino. A lot of the parents applauded his tough love and actions because, see, his first year in office, he got the numbers up. A lot of students did pass the New Jersey minimum basic skills test. The scores improved. Parents who took their kids out of the school and sent them to private school or another school because of the violence before he got there were now putting their kids back in Eastside High because of Joe Clark. Even the police department was happy with what Mr. Clark was doing because they were not getting calls every day to come there anymore. Because before he took over, Eastside had one of the worst academic records in the state. But some people argue that he still wasn't doing enough to get the numbers higher. But he said it's tough because he spent a lot of his time chasing people who commit vandalism, using drugs, selling drugs, prostitution, in and outside of the school grounds. Even the 5%ers, 5% Nation were after him and making death threats because a lot of the black students, they studied that religion, but Joe Clark thought they was just causing a lot of racial tensions in the school. And he used to call the 5%ers out. He called them out. He called them a cult that was poisoning the kids' minds. Wow. But overall, he turned the school around. His name was ringing bells, and not just in New Jersey now, but across the world. And he caught the attention of some of the press media outlets like the Time magazine, who ended up putting him on the front cover. He was on the cover of Time magazine issue. It was called It's Getting Tough to Answer. He had a baseball bat in his hand and everything. Joe Clark, wow, man. All the news medias, they started coming to the school. They started filming him, talking to Joe Clark and his staff and the students. They was treating him like a celebrity, man. But then, you see, NBC News came there, right? And they had their cameras on, and the cameras had caught how he had chains and locks on the door, which is a fire code violation. And that upset the fire marshal and the mayor of the city. Now, we all know that he had the chains on the door to keep the drug dealers out. And he's been doing that since he first started at Eastside High. Because, see, he had already gotten in trouble one time before the news channels caught it. And, the first time he got caught, the Board of Education was fined $1,000 for each door, which Eastside High, they got a lot of exit doors. It's $1,000 a door. It was fine. But he had to do it. He had to do it for the kids' safety because he told the school board that he needed the electrical locks installed, in which today, every school has them now, the electrical locks on the door. But back then, they didn't even give it to him. They told Joe Clark that there wasn't enough money in the budget to get those electrical door locks. That's why he never stopped chain locking the doors. He would just hurry up and take the chains off whenever the fire inspector would come around. But, this time, it was caught on national TV that he had door chain lock. You know what I'm saying? He had a door lock. And, the Board of Education members and the mayor blamed Mr. Clark and was trying to press charges on him. They wanted to suspend him for insubordination and everything. They really were mad because he had just kicked out over 60 students. They let him kick out 300 students before, and he just did it again, but was only over 60 students this time who were causing problems at the school. But, as far as removing the chains off the door, he removed them. He took the chains off the door, and you know what happened after that. The crazy part is, now that the doors were no longer chain locked and open freely, guess what happens? 2 students who were suspended snuck back in through the doors and assaulted 2 female teachers. Wow, that's crazy. They punched and beat the 2 teachers up for reporting them for their behavior. And Joe Clark was furious when that happened, man. The board and the city council was trying to put him in jail for putting chains on the door because they couldn't afford the electrical locks he wanted. Now 2 teachers just got beat up by some suspended students who snuck back into school. Joe Clark was mad about that, man. And he even threatened to quit. Which made his whole staff join in. And they said they was going to quit right along with him if he left. And then the students were so upset when they heard that he was going to quit They threaten to drop out of school and get transferred to another school if Mr. Clark decides to leave. The students and the parents even did a march and a pep rally in support of Principal Joe Clark. And look, rap group Run DMC even showed up to support him. Wow. Everybody was supporting Joe Clark and behind him. The pastors at the church, it was all over TV, ABC, CNN, NBC, CBS, and many more news outlets. One company, which was an online software business, admired him so much that they offered $1 million in scholarships to East Side students if he changed his mind about not leaving the school. They didn't want him to leave. The people were behind Joe Clark, and they had his back, and they didn't want him to go. Then he got a call from the White House, and President Ronald Reagan and his team had been following all the hype about him, and they praised him for the good work he was doing at the school. And look, Ronald Reagan and his administration, that administration, but they offered him a job in the White House as a White House policy advisor, which was for more money. He would have got more money if he would have took the job, but Mr. Clark turned the job down. But they told him the door was still open if he changes his mind. But all that publicity and attention he was getting made the Board of Education, now they want to drop the charges against Joe Clark because they really was making fools of themselves and exposing to the world that they didn't care about the students. They just wanted to show, Joe Clark that they had the power, but it backfired. And once that happened, now he was more popular than ever. And he started receiving letters from fans all around the world. He went on to do interviews on the CNN show called Crossfire, the talk show Donahue, Current Affair, CBS's 60 Minutes. They did 2 segments on him. But it was a segment that the news anchor Connie Chung from NBC at the time did on him called Clarkian Revolution that really got him the movie deal. Because see, after that segment aired on TV, a movie producer named Norman Twain saw it, right? And showed up to the school every day to capture some footage of Joe Clark. And from there, the rest is history. The crazy part is that Universal had bought the rights to his story 5 years before, but they never moved on making the movie. So Norman Twain became interested, and he bought it, and he developed the script, and they pitched the idea to Warner Brothers, and they decided to do a movie on him. And it was directed by John Avildsen, who is the same guy who directed the movie Rocky and The Karate Kid. And Joe Clark was hands-on when it came to making a movie, saying he didn't want no heavy profanity or sex, and he wanted everyone from black, white, young, old to go see a clean, funny movie. So, when it came time to shoot the movie, they shot a lot of the scenes at the location at East Side High School, in which the school board was upset with that. They didn't like that, shooting the movie there. But when it came time for the casting on who to play Joe Clark in the movie, Warner Brothers' first choice was the late great actor Sidney Poitier. But he turned the role down. Because he didn't believe in the politics of Joe Clark. Wow. Then, they thought about Bill Cosby playing him. But then they changed their mind because they felt that they don't think Bill Cosby could have took that role serious like that. Then they reached out to Eddie Murphy, but he was stuck in the contract with Paramount Pictures that prevented him from doing it. Then they wanted actor Danny Glover, but at the time he was shooting Lethal Weapon Part 2, the sequel, right? So he couldn't do it. So that's when producer Norman Twain decided to go with actor Morgan Freeman, in which he had to fight for Morgan Freeman to get that role because they didn't want him or something. Because see, at the time, Morgan Freeman had only did 2 movies, which were Glory, which was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and won 3 of them. Denzel he won the Best Supporting Actor for that movie. And the other movie Morgan was in was Driving Miss Daisy, which was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and won the Best Picture award. And Morgan Freeman was nominated for Best Actor. But Morgan Freeman, he loved Joe Clark and believed what he stood for in saving the kids in school education. And Joe Clark said he was very impressed with Morgan Freeman once they got together, and he had to hang out with him to try to, duplicate his style for the movie. Joe Clark said when his wife and kids saw Morgan Freeman portraying him, they said, man, he really acts like you. That's how you act. Wow. The personality and everything down to the T. Morgan Freeman embodied that character, man. Now, for the boys that sung the fair East Side High song, right? One of my favorite parts of the movie. The guys that were singing in the bathroom, they were really, except Sam, Jermaine Hopkins, but everybody else, the group, they were really students at the school. Joe Clark told them that they was doing a movie on him and he wanted to write them in the script. Now, how they became a group, it all started during their freshman year. And one of the members named Mike Best said one day, Mr. Clark had called him down to the office, and when he got there to the office, 2 girls that liked him were there, and that's when Mr. Clark called him a playboy because he was trying to mess with 2 girls at the same time. And Mr. Clark told him, okay, you trying to mess with 2 girls, let me hear the school song. And if he didn't know it, he was going to suspend him because everybody was required to know the song when he asked you to sing it. Mike Best said he didn't know the song at the time, and he begged Mr. Clark for another day to practice the song. So that's when Mike Best got his 2 cousins to help practice the song with him. And when they sung the song the next day for Mr. Clark, he was blown away by their a cappella harmonies. And that's when the other members joined the group, and he made them sing that school song like 3 times a week in his office whenever they had events at the school and everything. And he named them the Playboys at first. He called them the Playboys. And when it was time to make the movie Lean On Me, the moving casting team heard and loved their voices, and the rest is history. And they got a major record deal too. SBK/EMI Records signed them, and they changed their names from the Playboys to Riff. I didn't know they did a song called White Man Can't Jump for the movie too. White Man Can't Jump soundtrack, which hit #1 on the charts. Wow, that's crazy, man. But I'm gonna have to do their story in the future about what happened to them, because a lot of them later joined the R&B group called Men of Vision. And I think one of them had passed away, one of the main guys that was singing in the bathroom. But that bathroom scene when they were singing for Mr. Clark was one of my favorite parts of the movie. But anyway, so the Lean On Me movie, right, gets released on March 3rd, 1989. They made a movie about a principal. He was still the principal. That's crazy. But the movie gets released, opened at #1 at the box office, grossing over $31 million, and it took $10 million to make it on a budget. And the movie won an award for the Outstanding Motion Picture at the NAACP Awards. And Morgan Freeman won the Best Actor Award at the NAACP Image Awards. Joe Clark was a businessman too. He sold that story. He sold his story to Warner Brothers for about $15,000 and a small percentage of the movie's take. When Arsenio Hall asked him on his talk show how true was the movie, Joe Clark said that 95% of it is accurate. He said some of it, like the beginning of the movie, they showed him teaching a bunch of white students in the year 1967. But the real fact is, students were mostly black. Another part of the movie showed him in jail, but he was never arrested and went to jail for locking the school doors with chains. And some more things in the movie were also fabricated, but overall he was satisfied how the movie came out. But anyway, so after the movie came out and became a hit, successful and everything, Joe Clark started to have some issues with heavyweight champion boxer at the time, Mike Tyson. He had some problems with Mike Tyson because Warner Brothers had given Mike Tyson over $150,000 and a small percentage of the movie's profits just to promote the movie. They wanted Tyson to promote, and they gave him money, more money than Joe Clark. But Don King responded and said, hey, that's what we negotiated. It's all business. You know Don King about that business. But anyway, so, Joe Clark then had to face some more controversy when he had a female rapper named Wanda D perform at the school. And while she was on stage performing, she stripped 3 male dancers down to their G-strings on stage in front of the students. And the story goes with that whole incident. While Joe Clark wasn't even there, Joe Clark was out of town promoting the movie Lean on Me, but he gave permission for the performance at the school. But he was unaware of what, the female rapper Wanda D act was about. The media made it look like the students and the teachers that watched were in shock. Joe Clark took full responsibility of the whole incident because he was the principal. And he said in an interview that it was just an ethnic dance and it was no big deal. But the Patterson City Council demanded that he be fired immediately. The mayor did have his back in the day, but now, once this happened, he had to turn on him. And he felt that Joe Clark getting too big for his britches. He felt that Joe Clark forgot what his job was, which is being a principal, not a movie star. Wow. So, Joe Clark started to face a lot of stuff, man. A lot of jealousy, envy. And he was also, he was a black man with a lot of power, which also brought on some racism. And, he was getting tired of it. Man. And the school board ended up suspending him for 5 days with pay, though. They suspended him for 5 days with pay. And, he threatened to resign again because at that point, he was just tired of fighting with the school board and the city officials about everything. Nobody wanted him to quit, especially the students and the parents, but he was just tired of it. He wanted to get the test scores up a little more, but he just figured he did all he can do. And he did help a lot of students while he was there at Eastside High, change their life. He was just dealing with a lot of stress, and he had to have heart surgery too. And you know what? He resigned from Eastside High in July 1989, just 2 months after his heart surgery. Now, after that, now that he left Eastside High as the principal, he just chilled out and was trying to get his health together and started doing more public speaking and lectures all around the world. And, years later, 1995, he ended up getting a job as the director at a youth detention center in Newark, New Jersey. And, he wanted that challenge because they said nobody was able to control it. Like I said earlier, Joe Clark loves a good challenge, especially when it comes to kids, to straighten out kids. But then, he ended up leaving that job around 2002 after he was getting a lot of complaints and accused for excessive use of physical restraints, including shackling, cuffing, and putting teenagers in isolation for long periods. They said he had violated the manual standards for excessive use of cell restrictions. Apparently, Joe Clark sent 8 teens to their cells for 37 straight days, only allowing them for only about an hour each day to exercise or shower, attend anger management classes, or go to court. Even though these teens were violent gang members awaiting trial on charges of murder, carjacking, drug dealing, rape, and had disobeyed rules and were very disrespectful to the officers. But for some reason, they felt that Joe Clark was too harsh on them. And he wasn't taking that, man. He said, you know what? He quit. He quit because he felt the system wasn't tough enough on the gang member teens and felt someone is going to get seriously hurt or killed because they were too soft on these kids. And he didn't want to be part of that and tolerate gangs taking over the facility. So he quit. And after that, he just ended up moving to Gainesville, Florida on a 10-acre horse farm in Newberry. He just relaxed and just lived out his life, man. And on December 29th, 2020, Joe Clark died at his home in Gainesville, Florida, after a long battle with an unknown illness. Now, they never said what the illness was, though, so they just say an unknown illness. You know, in 2018, they were supposed to make a TV series based on the Lean On Me movie, but it was more focused on a female principal that basketball star LeBron James was supposed to be part of it. He had his hands in it. He was involved in that whole TV series, but it just never happened. The script was never picked up. You know, Joe Clark also put a book out, Laying Down the Law. Joe Clark's Strategy for Saving Our Kids is the title of the book. Great book. I read it, and you know, it goes into a lot of detail, more detail about his whole time at Eastside High. So make sure y'all check that out when y'all get a chance. And I also saw a couple of students who went to that school during that time. He was principal. They put out a couple books too about their time there. You know, Joe Clark's children, they doing good in life, became very successful in life as well. A lot of them were track stars and Olympic champions. But you know, Joe Clark, man, truly be missed. True definition of a principal who really cared about his students and making a difference in their lives, man. He was 82 years old. Rest in peace. Principal Joe Clark.